And use effect has three versions. One version is without any second parameter in this function. So this will be called whenever there is a state or props change. Always, it will be called always whenever there is change in the state or props. Then the version 2, when we pass empty rectangular bracket as an empty array, this will be called only on the page load. And after the page is loaded, this will not be called. And then the version 3, where we pass a variable name, the one which is changed. So whenever this variable name is changed, this will be called. Whenever this variable name is changed, this will be called. And whenever both are changed, or either of them is changed, then this is called. So this is the use effect. There is one more thing about the use effect, which we will do some other time, because that's that we have not reached to that part. Okay, let's now create a new project. Today we'll create a new project, and that will be the routing. So I will create npx create react at routing. Okay, maybe I can say my routing. So we will see how to do the routing. The routing is also divided into basic and advanced. Right now I will do only the basic part of the routing, and advanced part we will do when we will do the project, because advanced is little complicated. I don't want to jump directly on that part and confuse you with lot of stuff. So we'll see the basic part of routing. Okay, let it install, then we'll start the routing. Okay, so explain API integration after routing. Okay, so in the React, that is one of the tasks, how to call the API, and we will do that soon, because I will be completing React basics in few days, and one of the topic of that basic is how to call the API and use it in our React application. So that's already part of the course, but not immediately after routing, but in few days I will take that. Okay, so I am done with I'm done with this installing. Let's go to that project folder. That says cd project name my routing, and now we have to install the routing. So what are the steps in installing the routing? So, and the routing is, we need to, let me open the readme file of my routing. Okay, here I will write on the steps. So the first step is we need to install the module. Install the following module. So we get install npm install react router DOM -- save. In the previous versions of the npm, if I don't put -- save, it generally does not save. But right now, if I only put this part, then also it gets saved. So, but for the safer side, I am putting the save part also. Otherwise, this is also sufficient. Can anyone tell me when I mean by save, what is mean by save? Where will it get saved? React router DOM will be inserted in which file so that I know that it is installed in my project? Okay, so in the package.json, so when I say npm install react router DOM, we have the package.json, and in the package.json, this is the dependencies, and when I run this command, this react router DOM will be inserted in one of the lines here in the dependency in package.json, and then I know that this one is installed in my project. So let me run this. Okay, so this is the first step in the react router DOM, and once it is installed, we'll go to the second step of that, how to do the routing. Okay, so now it gets installed. Now we'll go to the second step for this one. So we have in this, if you go, we have app.js. This is the main page which loads whenever I start the application. So let's start the application and we'll see what it gets started. Now I'll create different pages here, different components, and for each URL I will call different components, and that is a part of this React Router DOM. So let me show you. Okay, so this is the initial one. Okay, let's delete these two parts. I will import React from React, and let's delete all this because I don't want default. And I will also go to index.js. I will delete index.css. And now we have the hello world here. Okay, so this is the main page which gets started when the page loads. I will create different pages. So what is the next step for the React Router? Create different components for different URLs. So maybe I can create home.jsx, which will be displayed first when the page will load. Then maybe I can say login.jsx when person goes to login page. Right now I'll not create login page, I'll just create the routing. That's what I want to show you. I have register.jsx page. Okay, so let's have 4 pages. Logout.jsx. So when user will go to slash in the URL, he will go to home.jsx. When user will go to login, he will go to login.jsx. When user will go to register, he will go to register.jsx. And when he will go to logout, he will go to logout.jsx. I will also create couple more pages. For example, maybe I can say categories.jsx. So when someone will go to categories/categories, he will go to categories.jsx. And I also want so I will also point to categories.jsx when someone goes to categories and some ID like 1 or 2, that is a category ID. So this is the category ID, which will be dynamic. So this category ID will be dynamic. User can put anything 1, 2, 3, 4. If we put 1, I will show first category. If we put 2, I will show second category. Like that, I will create dynamic URLs here in this routing part. So we will start with the routing, creating these URLs. I can create this URL directly in this app component, or I can create a new component and create the routing there. Okay, so let's create a new component. I will name it as routes.jsx. So if you're doing project along with me, you can create routes.jsx file, and I will fill that file now. So here I will say import React, or I will say RFCE. Let me put routing here, and in the app.js I will call that route. Okay, so what I am doing, I am calling routes component, which is simple right now, nothing fancy, in this app.js, and I will point that this content to routes. So that means this is the component from this file, and I am calling this component here. So when I will load the page, it will see the content from the routes, and routes is here. Now here my main logic of routing will appear here. For that I need different file. So let me create one home.jsx. I'll create login.jsx. Okay, I will create logout.jsx. I will create register.jsx, and I will create categories.jsx. Okay, in everything I will put RFCE. Just create a dummy structure. RFCE. RFCE. When I put type RFCE, automatically I get the code default template structure. Okay, so now before I go further, you create route.jsx plus all the files which I created, categories, home, login, logout, register, routes.jsx with simple content, any content you can put, and call in app.js, call the routes file, routes component, and call the routes component here in app component. Okay, I will give you 2 minutes to create all the files and calling the routes here in the app.jsx. So let me know once it is done so I can go further. Just write down done in the chat that you created all the files and calling the route in app.js. So in the readme I will write down create routes.jsx file and call that component in app.js, replace content of app.js with routes. Okay, so this is the step number 2. So total number of files is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 files. Okay, so Sonu Singh is done. Let me go further now. Okay, so these are the URLs which I want to point to these components. So whenever user will go to this URL in the on the page, it should point to login.jsx. That's what the task is. Let's go to the route page, and here we will implement our logic. So first thing is we need to import all the components which we need to use. So for example, import home from home, import login from login, import logout from logout. Let's see what we have. Import categories from categories. Import register from register file. So you can save your file as .jsx or .js. It is up to you. Both are fine. Generally, whenever I have HTML inside the JavaScript, I save it as .jsx file. But if I write only JavaScript function, I will save it as .js file. So it depends on whatever you like, you can use it. So in addition to these files which I want to use for each URL, different URL, as I showed here, let's also import few things from the React Router DOM which we installed in this project. So we have to import something from React Router DOM. So what things we need to import? One is called the browser router. Second thing which we need to call is switch. Third thing which we need to call is route. And there is one more. I'll show you one more what I need. 1 second. I need one more. Let me check that one. Can anyone tell me what is one more I'm missing here? I have one more thing to call. Okay, and one more I have to call the redirect. Sorry, one more redirect. So we need to call this four components, four functionalities or four modules from the React Router DOM. Before I use all this information, I'll give you 1 minute to import all this information. Link is not needed here. Yeah, but I can also call link. Okay, good point. Let me call link also. Or I'll use link in another page. Right now I'm not using link here. I'll give you 1 minute to finish this import part. Okay, I hope everyone completed all this import statement. If you're not done, do it along with me or do it after the class. Okay, now once we imported all, now we have to use all this information in my routes component. So I'll start with div only, and here I will start with the browser route. So everything will be wrapped inside this browser router. And inside browser router, I will use switch statement. Switch statement will check all this URL, and if it founds, let's say, login, then it will render the login component. Then it will not go to further to check it further. So inside the browser router, we will use the switch component. This is the switch. So we have div tag initially and then browser router. Some people prefer to put directly browser router without the div tag. But for today's exercise, I will put it inside this div tag. We can remove that also, the top div tag. Now inside this switch statement, I will use this route component, and I will use it like this. So I'll say route. Then I will say path, which path I want. So if you see, we have different kinds of paths, slash login, slash register. Let's go to slash, that is the home path. And then I will say component equal to which component I want to call. So I'm saying that when user go to slash path, I have to call this home component. And the path, whether the path should be exact or not, so we have to put exact here. So that means whenever the path is there, then it should go to home component. So always put the exact here so that you should not be misguided with the path. Because if I don't put exact, and if I create another path, for example, any other path, and if I don't put exact, then both will be displayed. This will be displayed and this also will be displayed. Okay, so best is just put exact so you know what you are doing. And then here I will create another path called as login, and I will call the component called as login component. Like this, I will create different path with different components. So here would be category. I will create two routes for the categories, as I explained here, that one will be with the ID and one will be without the ID. So now, okay, now what I have to do here, I have to change logout, register, categories, and I will put colon category ID. So whenever we want something dynamic, I put colon and name of the variable. I will explain this part in a bit. Just put this part like this, and here I will say categories. Okay, so when user will go to login, we'll call this component. Initially, we'll call home component. When user will go to logout in the URL, we'll call this component. We can create URL as we like, /x, /y, whatever we want, we can create as our whatever we want to. I want that if the URL is a/b/c/b, then call the logout component. That also fine. Whatever you want to put in the URL, you can put it here, and which component you want to call, you can call it here. So each URL is tied to different component. We can have multiple URLs to the same component also. Now let's work on this one. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so it's saying switch is not exported in the router DOM. So let's see what version of React Router DOM we have. So the React Router DOM version is 6 something. and they have done major change in the 6th version, which we will see in few days. Okay, previously the switch was there. This switch was there in the React Router DOM, but now after the 6th version they have removed it. So there are few changes in the 6th version which I will do it in few days. Right now I will move this, I will downgrade this React Router DOM to some 5 version and we'll finish this exercise. But in few days I will tell you what are the changes they have done in the 6th version so that we can change this. Since I want to explain this old part, 5th version part, because this is the important to understand how the route works, that's why I want to downgrade it to 5th part. But in few days, after I'm done with all the React components, I will explain you the 6th part of the React Router DOM. So what are the changes in the React Router DOM? So let's go back to the older version of React Router DOM. Let me see which is the version for, what is the old version name is that. Let's go to 5 version. Okay, let's try to change it manually 5 version. And here I'll say npm install again so that it will delete this version and install the 5 version. Okay, so 6 version we will do after some time because a lot of things I have to explain in the routing which are related to 5, and then we will only see what are the changes in the 6 version. Okay, so now we have the 5 version. Let's check if it is working. Okay, so now at least this is working. We can refresh it and see. So you will see whenever I go to localhost 3000, I see this component called as home component. Why I am able to see the home component? The reason is I put slash to be tied to the home component. Let's put something in the home component. I will go to the home component and I will give the few links here so that I should not type it in the URL. I should go directly by clicking the link. So here I should have the link for login, logout, register, and maybe categories page. Okay, I can also write down like a tag href equal to login like this /login, and I can complete a tag. I can use a tag for the login, and I can also use link tag which we get from the React Router DOM. Okay, so I can use link or a tag, any of them is fine. So for logout I will use link tag to show you, and in the link we have to say to. Here in the a we have to say href and in the link we have to say to, where you want to go, to equal to logout. So we can use both, whatever we like it. but this A is not to be used because this is the old HTML part, and this will reload the page. But this will not reload the page. This will directly call the logout component without reloading the page. Since React is a single page application, so reloading is generally avoided unless it is absolutely necessary. You want to clear some data or some absolute necessary is there, then only you refresh the page. Otherwise, you have to work internally, that is, you have to call only the components internally. So let me put for register also. And the last is categories. So I have put only a tag for the login, and for all other tags I'm using the link tag so that I can show you the difference, what happens when we call this or this. Okay. Now let's go to home page. When I click login, you will see login is called. Okay, so I want this login, logout, register categories to be available on all the pages. Otherwise, I won't be able to show you the difference. But I'm able to go to different respective page by calling the respective categories. Why don't we change this thing so that this part should not be here in this home.jsx. Home.jsx is only called when we have the slash. What about other? So we need to put this in some different place. Let's put this h3 in the routes only. In the routes only, before the switch statement, let me put this part, and I will call the link part here. Sorry, I will call link here, and I'm putting this the top content which will be available on all the pages here, because wherever we have this switch statement, the component will be loaded here, and we can display this before this component. So I'm putting this common part about the switch statement. So this is my website. Let's go to home page first. So this is my website, and I have links, and this home starts from here. If I go to login, I have the links here already. I am calling the login component here, logout, register, categories. Now let's see the difference between a tag and the link tag. I am on the categories page. I am selecting the my website. See, I have selected the my website and it is blue in color. When I call the login, the page will refresh and this my blue color will go away. My selection will go away because a tag refreshes the page. See, selection is gone because a tag refreshes the page and whole page is loaded again. All the CSS, all the content of the page will be loaded again. But when I select it and when I click logout, you will see this blue color is not gone. Only the logout content is changed. The content is changed. That means I'm not refreshing the page when I'm clicking these three links. Only when I click the login, because login has a tag, it refreshes the page and my selection is gone. But whereas in all other three cases, my selection is there, but the page is refreshed. URL is also changed. URL is also changed, but my page is not refreshed. Only the content is changed. Is that clear? This part. The difference between a tag and the link tag. So link tag is only used when you want to refresh the page somehow, then only you use the a tag. Otherwise, always use the link tag. The link will not refresh the page. It will only update the content. Okay, so this is my page. I will go to different pages. Let's add one more page. home page, and home page goes to slash. So I'm not refreshing the page anyhow. I'm just changing the content. Okay, before I go further, change your route path with these two elements. One is your website, one is the links, and import the links here. And once this is done, we'll go further in the routes to do some changes here. Okay, so just put this link and put these two lines in 1 minute. Okay, I hope everyone has completed this part. If you're not done, you can do later. Okay, so what happens when I go to something which does not exist? So in the URL, if I go to login, I can see the login pages here. I can go from the URL also, or I can go from here also. I can change this one. Now what will happen if I go to URL which doesn't exist? For example, if I go to news, sorry. So if I go to news, generally news doesn't exist here, right? So instead of showing the blank, because nothing, instead of showing the nothing, I want to show something. For example, I will, okay, let's remove this one. Let's say I will save this page as home page as not found. .jsx. I'll say not found. So if user put the URL which doesn't exist in our system, so here I can give the message to the user, page does not exist. Please choose another page, something like that. So I want to call this not found whenever the user try to call the page but which does not exist. So let's call this not found in the routes. Okay, so I'm calling this component here in the route, and I will create one route for not found. I'll say not found. And which component I have to call? This component I have to call. So what I'm doing, I'm calling the not found component, and I'm creating one URL for the not found. And now if I go to not found, I see that not found component is here. But what will happen when I go to news page which doesn't exist? So whenever user go to news page, I want to redirect the user to the not found page because that page doesn't exist. So what I will do here I will, in the last line, if we don't get any of the routes in the last line, I will call this component, that redirect. So I'll say redirect to equal to / not found. So that means if we don't get any URL, matching URL from all this list, then redirect the user to the not found. And not found is nothing but this component. And this URL not found is having a different route, which is the component of not found. So whenever if I put news, it will check if we have news component. Okay, we don't have news component. So let's redirect user to not found. Not found is something but this one. So let's go to news again now, and it's redirecting it to not found. So whenever we put the URL which doesn't exist, we redirect user to not found, and not found is another path for another component. So just create a not found component, import it here, create a routing for not found, and redirect. That's all. 1 minute to do this. Okay, so Kate is asking why this is there. So this is not inserted by me. This is inserted by my editor, because if I go to next line, it goes to next line, and we need a space so editor is removing the extra space in the end. So if it removes the extra space, then we will get bad, bad output. I will show you now. See, categories is too much attached to pipeline. So editor, when we have the space, editor remove the space and put like this, because this editor Visual Studio may be some pretty fire settings. When I put a space in the end and save it, it removes the space. So if I remove the space, I need some space manually to add it. That's the reason it is here. You can remove it if you can put a space in the end. But if you cannot put a space in the end, then you need to add like this. So when I put a space, editor removes all the space in the end and just replace with this character. Curly bracket, single quote, space, single quote, curly bracket. Okay. So these are the small things, routing and all, React thing, use effect, which I explained yesterday, use state, props, all these things will be used when we try to do the real project. And so you should memorize all these things. Though routing is one-time effort for any project, but at least you should know how to do the routing. You don't have to remember it, you don't have to by heart, you just want to know that how to create the routing. Then you can copy paste the code from your previous project, but at least you should understand what we are doing to achieve what. Okay, so instead of calling the component like this, there is another way also to call the component, which I will explain you tomorrow, not today, but at least for today, you go through this one, try to see how to do the routing part. There are few basic things also remaining in the routing, which I will complete tomorrow, and there are very advanced things which we will do in the future, okay, when we start the project. So if I remove the browser router, it will not work. So let me remove this browser router. So let's see now. Okay, let's refresh. So when I refresh, it's saying you should not use link outside the router. Okay, let's remove the link also. Okay, let's try now. Now switch is not able to use it without router. So we need this router, otherwise you won't be able to use switch, you won't be able to use route, you won't be able to use link, nothing will work. So you can also move this browser router in the app.js or in the index.js. Before we call app, we can wrap it with browser route. I have put it here, but it's up to you. You can put anywhere at the top component also, either in the index or in the app.js also. Wherever you want, you can put it. So generally, many people prefer in the index.js. Some people prefer in app.js. I prefer in my routes.js sex, like it should be separate from whole website. So this routing, we can do a lot of things in the routing. We can have the layout part also in the routing. So for example, I have, okay, third step is create switch browser router and route lines of code. Okay, I'll show you what layout means. So what we can do with routing, we can also create layout 1. So layout 1, maybe I will say layout 1 should look like Facebook. Okay, and I will create another layout. I will say layout 2 should look like Instagram. So I'm not showing you how to use it now. That is very advanced part, which we will do sometimes later. So I can say this component, login component, should use layout 1. I will say logout component should use layout 2. So I can create different kinds of layout which will look like Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp. We can create 3 layouts and we can say which components should call which routes, layout 1, layout 2, or which component should call which layout. So that is also we can do in the routing, which we will do later to do. We can also create the private or public routing. So for example, I can say this categories page, this categories component should be called only for the user who are logged in. So I can give the private routing to the categories. But for the login, logout, register, I will give some public layout. So this way also we can allow or we don't allow. So if user is not logged in, if they try to access private route, we will redirect him to public route. So that part also we can do it in the routing. So there are a lot of things we can do in the routing, which we will see in future. So if you want to open the link, I'm not sure why you have put 2 localhost. If you want to open Google directly, you can use a tag and open using, http google.com. But why you have put 3000 2 times? Okay, localhost. So localhost 3000 is one link, right? Google.com is another link, or localhost is appended with google.com. Okay, what appended? So generally this is not the valid link, the one which you have shown, like localhost. I don't think anyone doing this kind of thing. So this I don't think this is the valid kind of the use case. Okay, I don't think this is the valid kind of use case. I have seen, but then also if you want to do this one, so you can so if I do something like here also, it will go into the not found. Maybe you can manipulate it in the not found. You can try to access it in the, okay, so you can access it in the not found. So so the thing is that I'm not sure this kind of the URL is valid kind of thing. I have seen, but anyhow you can also work it. If you call this one, it will anyhow go to not found. Then you have to manipulate in the not found this part and try to pass this part and try to redirect user to google.com. You can do that kind of thing. Facebook generally does like this. They put question mark URL equal to www.google.com, something like that. Facebook does like this, and many websites does like this. So this is generally to be handled in the Node.js layer, not the React layer. So what they do, they use this URL and they track it, do some tracking in Node.js, and then they redirect user to www.google.com, for example. So what will happen? They will know how many people click the google.com, so that they can do some advertising or some advertising purpose. They do like this. But this is not the good way to do it, because this can be anything. And if you go to not found, then you have to do extra effort to pass it and send it to the google.com. And in this, you're not even tracking it. Okay, so better is use this format and track it in the Node.js layer and then redirect user to google.com. That you can do. So next question is navigate to home page when we are in the register page. So you mean to say after user register we need to send the user to home page, or the link kind of thing which I have created here like this? Okay, you mean to register it and send it user back to home page, right? Okay. So generally when you are on register page, for example, let's see what props we are getting. Okay, and I will create some button here which will be consider this button as a register button. That means user is registering with some forms, and you do on click equal to, you call some sub function, for example handle submit, and you will create this function. So generally this, consider this is a register page where we have lot of fields, and when user will click register button, it go to handle submit. In the handle submit, it will take all the data, form data, and save it in database. Okay, so it will save it in the database, and after it is saved in the database, we need to redirect user to home page or login page like this. Okay, you mean this one? Is this right? Okay, now how to redirect to home page? We will see first what is coming in the props. So I'll do console.logs of props. So this props will come always in the React component. Then we'll see what things are coming in the props, and then I'll show you which props to use it. So if I refresh the page, I'm going to the register page. I have this form. When I click register, I see this props. In the props, we have history, location, match, and all things are there. Let's go to history. In the history, we have push, we have go back, go forward, go, block, a lot of things are there. But main thing is we need to use the push. So here what I will do, I will say props dot history dot push, and then I will say slash, whatever URL I want, I will put it here. If you want to redirect user to login, you will say slash login. If you want to take user to the home page, you will put directly only slash. Now what will happen when I click refresh? Now observe what happened when I click register. When I click register, so we do some database work and then we redirecting it to the home page. So this is the step to send the user back to the home page. Okay, no problem. You're most welcome. You can ask questions. If you are asking questions, I feel that you are trying to understand what I'm doing. So this was the good question. This anyhow we will do when we will do real register page. But since we are in the routing and you asked, I showed you how to send it to the another page using the props.ht.push. Okay, any other question? So for today, everyone go through this routing part, because you know in the class you only pay attention to me. After the class, you try to do experiments on the routing, see how things work in the routing. Okay, lazy loading is something. Let's say these components, these are only, how many components are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 components are there. Let's say tomorrow if I have 100 components, then what I will do? Okay, so then I will not call 100 components immediately here. If I call 100 components, whenever I'm saying import, this whole component is coming here. So this is something kind of, it's loading too much. So if I have 1,000 components, for example, it's a big application. I have 1,000 components, and if I try to call all the components here, it will break my page. It will slower my page. So here we have to call the lazy loading. Though I will explain the lazy loading tomorrow in the class, but since you have asked, I will show you how can we do that. So for example, we need to import all the statement using the lazy loading, not all at one time. Only we have to call, we will call this component whenever it is required. So whenever someone click login, only then the login component should be called. Otherwise, now what will happening? All these components are called in a page, and then we create this path. But I have seen, I was having one application where a lot of 50, 60 components were there, and I was calling it at one time. Then it was slowing my project. So we have to use the lazy loading. So I'll just show you the code, but we will not do much on this one because I don't want you to put stress on this part now. We will put this stress tomorrow. Okay, I'll just call this not found. Today I will only do one not found using the lazy loading. So I'll say not found is equal to, so in the React we have something called lazy, and here we have to write the arrow function, and in the arrow function the second part will be the import statement. And what we are importing not found, like this. So I'll delete this part. I will keep not found here like lazy loading. Now whenever we will call, okay, now whenever we will call something which is not there, for example, let's first load the page, and we will something called as news. Okay, so it is giving some error kind of thing. We have to use component suspended while rendering. Okay, so whenever we use the lazy loading, we need to do some extra efforts, extra changes on this file, and that we will do tomorrow. Okay, but for this line, this is a step how we lazy load the component, because we may have thousands component. We have to call using this, and the component will not be loaded unless it is called. So whenever I go to this URL, then only this URL, then only this component will be called. Otherwise it will be only a simple variable without real component. Okay, so this is the part. This will directly will not work here because we need to add something here. Something we need to add here, which I will show you tomorrow. Okay, so for now you just see the lazy loading, but exactly what we have to do changes we will do tomorrow, because I don't want to stress that today. Okay, so thank you very much. See you tomorrow.